You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
We see Franklin Roosevelt's picture on a flyer in the year 1936. There's a big 1936 printed on the flyer, and then the words, and I hope I'll get this right, Die Demokratische City, the Democrats, in Pennsylvanian German. Wuschen die Republicans go do für die Common Light. Hans Bärer nix. Then the words, our president. It's a really good day here in my history studios because I received my new blue jeans from Quince. Nice dark blue indigo color, stretch fit, stretches to the right places. It's very comfortable. I can wear them while I'm podcasting. Or let's say I have a business meeting. It's not a problem to wear these jeans with a nice dress shirt. It works. High quality. That's what I like about Quince. I've actually purchased from Quince before, so it's pretty easy. I was very excited when they became a sponsor because it's pretty easy for me to speak about them. I have a black turtleneck long sleeve that I got from them because they advertised on a different podcast. But that's just the thing. When you hear a product that's sponsored on the internet, whether it's Instagram or podcasts or things, you're probably like, how can it, be... Is it too good to be true? And that's the thing. Quince has really got high quality. They make deals with ethical factories, too. The products are not expensive. You get shirts for $34 in some cases. Got to check it out. Refresher every day with luxury you'll actually use. Head to quince.com/myhist for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada, too. That's QUINCE.com/MYHIST for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/myhist.
Study and play come together on a Windows 11 PC. And for a limited time, college students get the best of both worlds. Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
From an interesting book, America and the Germans, Frank Trommler and Joseph McVeigh, published in 1983. He talked about the remaining German-speaking American people, at least at the time of 83, and how, when it was written, it was just ending. That last generation that would have German as mother tongue were just starting to pass away, and not many of their descendants, maybe 5% of grandchildren who had grandmothers and grandfathers who spoke German as their original tongue could speak it now. 5%. But at this time in 1936, this group was of a political age. In a chart of persons claiming German as a mother tongue, it went from 4.9 million in 1940 to 3.1 in 1960. Even this was down from before. At the turn of the century in 1910, 50% of non-English newspapers in America were German. But 1917 and the war was a rough time. Assimilation was encouraged. Children who grew up speaking German in the house weren't fluent by adulthood. By 1983, some 5%, as we said, spoke the language. True, but this belies the amount of German speaking that is going on overall in the country. That's the thing. So we fail to see that, in a sense, this is a very German country in the 19th and 20th century. I know my Midwest listeners will be saying, what do you mean 19th and 20th century? It still is. And that's right. And that's right. Especially when you talk about national origin or people doing their ancestry and things like that. Guess what? The person talking to you now, both of my grandmothers, their grandfathers came here from Germany. However, I think like it happens in a lot of families, it wasn't something that was discussed all that much at the family dinner table. Or you heard a little bit about it, but a lot more was made on our Karlsson, our Swedish side. Famously, Germans were original immigrants to the colonies and important in the development of North Carolina, the development of the state of Maryland, certainly Pennsylvania. And they were among those pushing out to the northwestern territories that became states. Missouri had a large German population. So does Illinois. Remember reading something about the original capital of Illinois, not Springfield, but the one before it, and the Germans were essential. It's essentially a German village that they made the state capital, essential for building all the wood structures. They were the ones that lived there. Texas retains a heritage of German Americans for the amount of settlers that came there. Germans were generally pro-revolution in the 1776 era, and they made an important contribution to the revolution. It's Pennsylvania where they are most prominent. Benjamin Franklin makes some unfortunate comments about Germans and their inability to assimilate. One shouldn't stereotype. He shouldn't have. Because there are several types. And the two most identifiable that we see in American history, at least according to this book, are those that arrived around the colonial era, and so were here for the 19th century, and those that arrived after the revolutions of 1848, just about in the middle of the 19th century. Two different groups speaking German, in some cases, maybe slightly different German, as we'll get into. In 1848, there was a revolution in Germany that attempted to bring democracy to Germany. Some of the fighters from the 48 German Revolution would appear on American battlefields in the Civil War. Meanwhile, a unique Pennsylvanian German dialect developed. But according to this book, the Pennsylvanian Germans were not always compatible with the new arrivals. In fact, in 1895, and this is like 40 years after most of the new Germans, quote, had arrived, a German said, we don't really associate with the European Germans. If we can form a group of our own, Pennsylvania Germans will tend to associate with Americans of English descent. A newspaper reporter at the time said that if he traveled around Pennsylvania and called out to a German person that, hey, you're German, they would say, no, I'm American, almost universally, whether it was like an adult or if he saw two children and said, oh, lovely looking German girls, they would say, we're American. And when asked what language they spoke, you might get a variety of answers. They might just say German, but sometimes they would say, we speak Pennsylvanian. I want to call out a difference now. You might be thinking the Pennsylvania Dutch when I'm talking about it. You're thinking about Amish. And that is one group, one subset of Germans, Americans that lived in Pennsylvania and, of course, live in other states as well. Ohio, Wisconsin, huge populations. That's one subset that's visible now because of the stands they take involving technology. Another group of Pennsylvanian Germans that were simply Pennsylvanian Germans. You don't notice them now because they're not speaking the language. Indeed, some of that starts in this period, especially that 1880s, 1890s. They would call the others New Germans or Deutschlanders, sometimes Germany Germans. This, as Pennsylvania Germans would fill American elk clubs and Oddfellows lodges. Indeed, they took it farther. A larger and ultimately successful assimilation movement began within the Pennsylvania German community, from a speech in 1875 by a professor at a German school, Palatine College. As long as we speak German, our growth will be retarded. No language can replace English. It is the language of government, of the courts, of legislation. Public schools in Pennsylvania, though establishing there was a fight, and many Germans were against it, public schools tended to be teaching children English. And between English speakers in Pennsylvania and assimilation-friendly Germans, the children were encouraged and eventually shed their language in favor of English. From a manual used to rid Germans of their accents includes this lovely line. It says, at least on my reading, the volunteers fired a volley down the valley. Now, of course, the V's are W's, and that's the way I pronounce them, but not the way they would. It's near the point of the Civil War, right? The volunteers fired a volley down the valley. Nothing's such an easy process. Politics doesn't work that way. and it was no different in the 1800s among Germans in Pennsylvania. There is no shame in being a German. We have no right to allow our children to become foreigners. We shouldn't acquiesce. The German is a beautiful language. And so you had a counter-movement to assimilation, which was Germanization, mostly from the 48ers or newer arrivals, mostly the Deutschlanders. These would be the people that would set up those beer halls, that would have folk festivals, that would establish and try to continue German tradition. The Germanization folks made a bold prediction, and you can see this. If we consider that in 40 years, the population grows the way it is, Philadelphia can be a German city if we just keep speaking German. In 50 years, Pennsylvania will be a German state. And the wonderful, beautiful German language will take its place in America as one of its languages. And it will be used in the halls of justice. But this doesn't happen because of the assimilation movement. And still, there is a large German population. As I said, I have family that are German, and so many people here do. It's it had been for years the largest non-English nationality. Now, if you count all Hispanic, that's larger. But if you start breaking those groups up, German will be the largest non-English nationality. It's embedded in the fabric of America, even though 2 world wars in which most of the people we're talking about would have simply considered themselves Americans in that fight. 2 world wars have stained things somewhat. I want to find a little piece by John Forney and read it. Yeah, so don't think Amish in these things I'm reading that you see Pennsylvania Germans. I don't know how to describe it except to say it's a race of people who are still among us, but they wouldn't be separately identified because they were speaking German at this time, at least in their social groups. And they were in their own social groups and the like, as opposed to today. The Amish are just one small group of that. Here is John Forney, who is a newspaper editor around the time of Lincoln and, gets his fame then. Lincoln would have known him personally. He's in Philadelphia, New York. And he publishes his anecdotes of public men, in the 1890s. The element of our population known as the Pennsylvania Dutch, which was once not only the leading element of that state, but of her most honored public servants as well, is rapidly fading before the matchless progress of the age. During the early part of this century, the honest, sturdy Dutch were invincible in our political struggles, and their representative men played a most important part in shaping the destiny of Pennsylvania. Their influence was supreme in the days of Simon Snyder, who routed the Federalists in 3 successive gubernatorial contests. It culminated in 1835 when 3 of its most conspicuous representatives, Mr. Wolfe, Mr. Rittner, and Mr. Muhlenberg, were rival candidates for the executive chair. When they say executive chair, they're talking about Pennsylvania. Looking back from the wonderful advancement of the last decade, we were slow to appreciate the qualities which were then most admired by the people of Pennsylvania, proverbially reluctant to accept progress that demanded change, strong in their convictions, affections, and prejudices, singularly honest and faithful in both public and private trust, and memorable for their patient industry and studied frugality. The Pennsylvania Dutch were law unto themselves in matters of both faith and works, and they have left an impress upon the policy and substantial character of that people, which they may well be proud. Sometime about the beginning of this century, meaning 1800, near Middlesworth, shook the sands of his native Jersey from his feet and located in what was then Northumberland, and afterwards Union, now Snyder County, Pennsylvania. He was penniless, friendless, and without education. It is doubtful whether he ever had the advantage of even the rude schools of his time. Pennsylvania was the theater of political actions, and Union County was his constituency. It was thoroughly German, and it was deferential to leadership, but it was fickle in its love, and worshipped and rejected its great chieftain at different times. During the War of 1812, he led a company to the field, but he was not eminently successful as a soldier. After the war, he was chosen to the legislature, and was 17 times elected to the House, and once to the Pennsylvania Senate. He was one of the few men who have swayed localities as if by magic in the conflicts of politics. Until 1829, he was a decided Democrat, and was the competitor of Wolfe for the Democratic nomination for governor in that year. He was disappointed, and with Rittner and others, espoused the anti-Masonic cause. Remember we talked in an episode about the anti-Masonic party? He picks up that banner because it's a good way to run against Democrats, which he's about to do. He revolutionized his county overwhelmingly and made it one of the most thoroughly anti-Masonic and anti-Democratic counties in the state, which it is to this day. This is the 1890s. He was ambitious and seemed unwilling to be out of office. Now and then his people would tire of him and defeat him, but it was impossible to find a substitute for him. And in a few years, they would rally for Middlesworth and send him back with great enthusiasm. He had been Speaker of the House in the preceding session, and as such, he had signed the Free School Bill. As the Speaker is required to sign all bills in certifying to the governor their passage by both branches of the legislature. So in other words, he's just signing it as Speaker, not agreeing. He had earnestly opposed and voted against the measure of free schools, public schools essentially. But when the German pamphlet laws reached Union County, the school law was there, with Middlesworth's name signed to it as Speaker. A competitor was running against him, Mr. Urich, and he brought the issue up to the Germans on the odious Free School Bill. In vain did Middlesworth protest that he had opposed the bill, and that he would not work more efficiently for its repeal than anyone, including Mr. Urich. To this, Mr. Urich answered, "Here, fellow citizens, is Mr. Middlesworth's name signed to the bill. How could he be opposed to a bill?" To which he signed his official approval. The argument was conclusive, and a tidal wave of popular reprobation swept the German leader into private life, because his name was appended to the bill that his people did not approve. And a few years later, however, the mistake was appreciated, and the usual atonement was made by sending Middlesworth back to the House. On the school question, he had said, "I never went to school, and those who desire education will attain it without taxing the public fund." He never advanced beyond the carefully nourished prejudices of his own constituency. He aspired to gubernatorial honors for many years under the new political organization. He lived throughout his life in opposition to liberal progress, rejecting education in his own household, and fell behind the advanced ideas of the excellent, usually unsuccessful, Whig Party. But in spite of Middlesworth, his people at least began progress. Younger blood and fresher ideas gradually confronted him. Schools had been dotted all over his county in defiance of the prejudices of the past, and colleges began to show their spires on the beautiful banks of the Susquehanna. He sadly witnessed the gradual departure from the good old days, when schools were comparatively unknown, and the scanty literature of the region, and even the laws, were read only in good old Pennsylvania Dutch. He battled on, not only till the issue became doubtful, but even after he had been unhorsed on his own battleground. I'm going to leave it there from the great John Forney. It's a magic little book that I got on eBay for not that much money. A magic little book. Because I guess if you're reading between the lines. Because what have we learned there in that kind of boring story about this old man who didn't like schools? Well, you see the struggle of the Pennsylvania Germans of how they're going to deal with a free school, which almost certainly is going to start to teach their children English. Because they're free schools and anyone can go, including English children. See, and they're run by the state, and the state of Pennsylvania, although heavily German influenced, is going to have a say. You see, he's like kind of against education because of multiple reasons. His community didn't like it. He thought it might be an extravagance. People could learn on their own as he did. But you see in there kind of the development of public education in an important state in America, in Pennsylvania. And you see the assimilation versus Germanization of an important immigrant group.